Alright, so today we're still talking about ratio and rate problems. Just this time you'll notice that we are not using a ratio table. So it says without, it says you can do it with or without a ratio table. Today I'm going to focus on this without part. Alright, so yesterday we saw the tables were there for us. Today it's this exact same thing. We're still going to do word problems. I'm just going to show you how to set it up without a ratio table so you don't have to draw that out. Guys, the thing that I want you to keep in mind, this is exactly like what we did yesterday. It's exactly the same. So what are my two operations that I can use? Jesse? Multiplication or division are my only operations. I should have. Okay? And then we're going to answer each question with a sentence. Alright, so for number 1, it says, out of 30 students surveyed, 17 have a dog. So in that first sentence, I have 30 and 17 that go together, correct? Correct. So I'm going to put 30 on top and 17 on the bottom. Since I don't have the chart to tell me what they mean, I'm just going to write next to it. 30 is talking about the students, and 17 is talking about the ones that have a dog. Okay, are we okay so far? Okay, now we're trying to change this to a new ratio. So down here towards the end, I'm going to draw my fraction bar. All right, and we're going to put our new numbers in there. It says we want to, based on these results, predict how many of the 300 students in the middle school have a dog. So that 300, where is it going to go? On the top or on the bottom? Kiana? 30 is talking about students. 300 is talking about students, so we're going to put it on the top. Okay, and you can write out students or we can leave it blank. All right, so just like yesterday, what can I do to 30 to get 300? Megan?
Multiply by 10.
Multiply it by 10. Could I still use that technique where I make it a 1? Yeah, you could divide by 30 and then multiply to get the 300. But since 30 times 10 is 300, I'm just going to do that on the bottom as well. And I end up with 170. So when it says to predict, I would say out of 300 students, what did we find out?
170 have dogs.
170 have a dog. Does it look like what we did yesterday? Just you don't have that table there. All right, so number 2 says 1, and be careful, if 1, so even though it's not written out as a number, that is a number, if 1 out of 12 students share a locker, how many share a locker in a school that has 456 students? So that 1 and 12 is going to go together. Do y'all agree? Okay, so let's write 1 over 12. What does 1 stand for? Because it just says if 1. Well, what is 1 talking about? Tristan?
Students.
Nope, 12 is talking about students. It clearly says 12 students. Draven?
Students that share a locker.
Yeah, the ones that share a locker, that's what that 1 is talking about. So 1 student shares a locker out of 12 students. So 1 student shares a locker out of the 12 students. When it's worded that like 1 out of something, that can be a little complicated because the 12 students goes together, but that information about the first number ends up being at the end. Do y'all see where we got that from? Okay. All right, we want to know how many share a locker in a school of 456 students. So here's my fraction bar. Where is 456 going? On the top or on the bottom? Janice?
Top.
On the top. So 456 is talking about the students. Is that what 1 is talking about?
Oh, no, it's going to be on the bottom.
So it's going to go on the bottom because 12 is talking about students. So that would match up. All right, y'all see how we decided that? Good with that? Okay. 12. Can I easily go from 12 to 456?
Yeah.
Yes? By how?
38.
38? So, if you have figured out that 12 times 38 is 456, you can absolutely use that, just like in the charts yesterday. All right, I don't know 12 times 38 off the top of my head. So what's another option? If I don't know how to go from 12 to 456, what could I do? Hand, please. What could I do if I don't know how to get from 12 to 456? What technique did you use yesterday? Michael, give it a try. Close. We're dividing by 12 to get the 1, and then we'll multiply by 456. So if I divide by 12, on the bottom I get 1, and then I can multiply times 456. Do y'all agree with that? If I do it to the bottom, I need to do it to the top. So we're going to divide by 12. What is 1 divided by 12 going to give me? You have a calculator, so this isn't that scary. What do I get there? Janess?
0.08, and then the 3 is
the 3 with the repeating bar. Perfect. Okay. And now on the bottom I did times 456, so I also need to do that on the top. So when I multiply that times 456 in the calculator, what does that give me, Megan?
38.
38. So I end up with 38 students. Sherry Locker. Out of 456 students. Now guys, that's not the only way I could have worded that. I could have said out of 456 students, 38 share locker. Okay, there's a bunch of different ways we can word these as long as we're saying the same idea. Okay. Number 3, if 84 cookies will serve 28 students, so right there, there's my information. Do y'all agree?
Yes, ma'am.
So I'm going to say 84 is cookies over 28, which is students. All right, and we want to put my other fraction down here. It says how many cookies are needed for 30 students? Allison, where's 30 going, on the top or on the bottom? On the bottom, because 30 is talking about students, so students are on the bottom. Can I easily go from 28 to 30? No, if I can't easily go all the way to the end, what would be my best option? Jake?
Divide by 28.
Divide by 28, which on the bottom gives me 1, and then I would times by 30. And whatever I write down on the bottom is what I'm going to do on the top. So 84 divided by 28, Draven? 3. Times 30 on the top gives me 90. So I end up with 90 cookies are needed for 30 students. All right, number 4. A survey reported that out of 50 teenagers, 9 said they get their news from a newspaper. So I have 50 what? Teenagers. Over 9 what? Not just newspapers.
Teenagers that
9 get their news from a newspaper. So I'm going to say get news from paper. Now again, in my sentence, I'm going to make that a little bit more clear, but for my fraction, does that remind me that these are the ones that are getting their news from a newspaper? Okay. All right, then it says, at this rate, how many out of 300 teenagers would you expect to get your news from a newspaper? So where's my 300 going? Janess? Teenagers? Where's teenagers at? The top, so 300 is going on the top. Guys, does it matter what order you do the first fraction?
Yes.
All I've done is I've just kept it in the order of the problem, right? But that second number always has to match. So if 300 is teenagers, it needs to go where the teenagers are. Okay? Here, when I had 30 students, 30 had to go where the students were. Here, when it said 456 students, 456 had to go where the students were. Here, when it said 300 students, 300 went where the students are. Do you see how that number is always going to go on the same level? Okay. All right, I need to go from 50 to 300. What are some of my options? Samantha?
You can multiply by 6.
I could multiply by 6. That would work. What's another option? Draven?
You could divide by 50 and then multiply 1 by 300.
I could divide by 50, which gives me 1, and then multiply by 300. Do you have to do this technique? No, in fact, if I was doing this, like on my answer key or on my homework, I would just multiply by 6 because that's just one step. If you can do it in one step, go for it. If you don't see that one step, is it going to be better to try to stare at the problem for 10 minutes or just go ahead and get a 1? Go ahead and get a 1. If you're having trouble with it, get a 1. So on top I put divided by 50, so I'm going to put divided by 50 on the bottom. Can someone tell me what I get for that? For 9 divided by 50, Lily? 0.18. And now I'm going to do times 300. And what am I going to get there, Aldrin? 54. Okay. Would I have gotten the same thing if I did 9 times 6? Yeah. All right. So let's see. How out of 300 teenagers, how many would we expect to get the news from the newspaper? So I'm going to say 54 get their news from a newspaper out of 300 teenagers. Now that doesn't mean they're not looking at newspapers online. It means that they physically do not read the old-fashioned paper that gets thrown out in your driveway. They just look online, which I think is what the majority of us do these days.
Not really.
Okay. You listen to the news? All right. But are you getting it from reading the newspaper that's left in our driveway? Probably not. You're probably listening to it on TV, reading articles on the internet. All right. So I know this has decreased a lot over time. All right. Are there questions about this? It's exactly like using a chart, just you don't have to draw out a chart. All right. So if you'll flip it over, guys, you have 9 problems on the back that I want you to work on. I will send a video out going over, if not all of these, some of these, helping you get them set up. All right, please make sure you use that video to help you out. Make sure you're getting them set up right. Does our math have to match exactly? No. Does the number that we get have to match exactly? Yes. Does our sentence have to match exactly?
Yes. No.
No. It just has to kind of say the same idea. All right? The only thing that has to be the exact same is the number that you get with your answer. Our work could look different, and our answer might be worded a little different, and that's okay. All right, so we'll flip that over, make sure we're getting started on our homework.